I want to start off by saying we blame President Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as senior ANC leaders, as well as some people in government, for what is happening now. This is indeed a crisis. We try to avert this crisis. Some of you might know, in April last year, we wrote a letter to President Ramaphosa urging him not to sign the Expropriation Act, saying what we believe the problems in the Act are. And by the way, those problems are not fabricated. If you believe it is fabricated, go and read Section 12.3 of the Act, which allows expropriation with no compensation. Of course, Deputy President Mashatile said in October last year that no compensation and expropriation without compensation is the same thing. We try to avert this. We also stated in our letter to the President that this will harm international relations, it will harm investments in the country, and we hoped and asked that he would refer the Expropriation Act back to Parliament. But I must say, our proposal was treated with disdain, because to this day, we have not received any response from the President. So we try to avert this. If somebody is to blame, it's the President and senior ANC leaders. Also with regard to the BELA Act, and you will know that President Trump mentioned some sectors of the community are being treated very badly, as he stated it. The fact is, the BELA Act is the worst thing any government can do to a section of its population. Afrikaners don't have traditional areas where our language and culture can thrive and exist. Schools, Afrikaans schools, plays a prominent role in our cultural existence. And therefore, an attack on Afrikaans schools is an attack on our cultural existence. And by sending out this message to the world, as well as the US, that this government is allowing a certain section of the population to be targeted, then it is not our fault. The President, as well as senior ANC leaders, should take full responsibility for that. AfriForum, Solidarity, and the Solidarity Movement tried to solve this targeting of our community through the BELA Act, through constructive discussions. Solidarity had, at NETLAC negotiations, as you know, Solidarity is a trade union, but that can speak for himself just now. And there was an agreement that was also signed by the presidency. And we hoped we could avert this situation. And we were then, again, treated with disrespect by the President, publicly denying that the presidency was involved. And that, of course, is not the actions of a president that has the interests of the country at heart. It's not a president that is loyal to all the people of this country. It's a president that places his own party's interest above the interests of normal South Africans, and not only Afrikaners. And therefore, our cultural relationship person, Barend Ace, has already this morning started to engage with various cultural communities and traditional leaders. It is now time that we build the future in a network of communities, and we can do this despite governments. Those are the issues. Then, of course, we're proudly part of the Solidarity Movement, and as our chairperson Flip Buys mentioned, we see our future in Africa. Our people in Afrikaans, the Afrikaner folk, became a people here on the southern tip of Africa. We did not develop elsewhere. We are not Europeans. You had Germans, Europeans, Dutch coming to the southern tip of Africa as Europeans, but we became a people here. We are indigenous to this people and to this country, and we are going nowhere. We want to also show appreciation to President Trump, as well as of course, the US government, for recognizing and identifying the discrimination that Afrikaners are experiencing through racial legislation, through the BELA Act, through threats to property rights. Of course, hopefully that will help to also urge the various parties also in this country to go to the negotiation table to find amicable solutions that's in the interest of all in the country. So that we will do, but we have to state categorically, we don't want to move elsewhere. We are not going to ask our children now to move to another country. The fact is, our ancestors worked hard to make sure that we as a people are formed down the southern tip of Africa. We're not going to disrespect that. We also have the interests of future generations in mind. We also have to make sure that our culture is transferred to future generations. And that cannot be done abroad. You cannot, in the long term, or there's a real risk. If you go to another country now, there's a real risk that your grandchildren will not say to you in the morning, hello, Opa. They would say something like, hi, granddad, or something in that respect. And that we don't want. That is why we are committed to find solutions locally. What are those solutions? I think there's a two-pronged approach. Flip Buys mentioned the Afrikaner Declaration. In the first place, Afrikaners want recognition as a group, not privilege. We want to be, as anybody else, recognized as first-class citizens in our country of birth. That can be done in various ways, and I'll mention the proposals we have just now. Then, of course, we also have to solve the problems of the country as a whole and the other cultural communities. In my discussions with Barend Eyes, he has mentioned the huge problems that are experienced in traditional communities, where there's a lack of mother tongue education, where land is owned by the government, and they refuse to make sure that those communities can have access to land. And this argument that these issues will be solved by the Expropriation Act is not true. The fact is, government does not provide land for communities. They take it for themselves, and they give permission for somebody to use it, and they can keep them off. So that's nationalization of land. And so this act will not solve that. It will worsen that. The government's land reform program has failed dismally. Why? Because they don't give property rights to people that get their land. And if you don't have a title deed, you cannot go to a bank and get funding. And therefore, you are set up for failure. So government has set up black people for failure on farms in this country. And to their own acknowledgement, 90% of these farms are failing. So for that, this government also needs to take responsibility. There is a land restitution program that we are in favor of, people that were lost their land unfairly and was not compensated. In terms of that program, why does it fail? This government loves to blame people for other people for what's going wrong, to hide their own responsibility. When we saw last Monday what was happening in the country, the president did not come out and say, well, we will address these issues, things that we've done that we think can be changed. No, they tried to get the scapegoats. Now it was AfriForum's fault. You know, people used to always blame Jan van Riebeeck, but this week Jan van Riebeeck had an opportunity to rest. It was now all AfriForum's fault. And also with regard to land, the government should take its responsibility for what is going wrong. In the restitution process, we've seen corruption. We've seen land being given to people that are connected to the ruling party. And we saw administrative chaos in that regard. The government has 4,000 farms, owns the largest chunk of land in this country. But again, without acknowledging that land can be used to take on inequalities in the country. They're now saying, well, white people, as they call it, don't want to be described in a racial term, we are Afrikaners. They say we own the most land in the country, which is false. It's the biggest part of what we see, or 20% of the country as a whole, the biggest part of commercial farming land. But commercial farming land is a small portion, because what is not seen as commercial farming land is traditional land. That, of course, is not developed because people there are set up for failure. There are lots of other land owned by government, which they refuse to transfer. So those are the issues. So don't come with false propaganda, and I'm not speaking to you, of course. We love the media. We believe in freedom of the press. We are speaking specifically to those that now create some crisis and say now we have to go and disrespect property rights. It will create more problems than those they are trying to solve. We've seen in Zimbabwe, it did not bring prosperity that everybody in Zimbabwe now have land. We've seen hyperinflation. We've seen millions of people leaving Zimbabwe. We have seen the economic collapse, and we are seeing people that are unemployed at the moment in Zimbabwe. We can be partners to help solve this land issue, but we are tired of being made the scapegoat for everything that is going wrong in the country. Then with regard to solving other problems in the country, we believe that we can assist. AfriForum has 165 branches countrywide and 177 neighborhood watches that are active in local communities to make sure that we fix roads, that we make sure communities get water, and that we make sure we clean our towns. And that is, of course, to the benefit of everybody in those towns. And we will continue to do that as part of building relationships. What is our proposals? We believe there should be an amendment act with regard to both BELA, the BELA Act, as well as the Expropriation Act. We believe the government should review its foreign policy. The two biggest trade partners of South Africa, the biggest one is, of course, China. The second one is the US. And as a country where our economy is only 0.4% of the world economy, we have to make sure that we benefit as much as we can in the interest of people in this country. What we are unfortunately seeing is a government that has moved away from a policy of neutrality. We need to be neutral so that we can trade with both China and the US. But of course, I don't have to give the list. We mentioned it yesterday at another media conference, but we've seen a move towards anti-Western, anti-US sentiments. And we now are reaping the terrible fruits of that foreign policy that we have. The culture of court is necessarily, Dirk will speak about the 141 pieces of race legislation in the country. And of course, one important thing is hate speech. If you're going to allow people to sing Kill the Boer, and everybody is just saying, no, this is not literal, this is figuratively speaking. Well, the actions we are going to face now because of this kind of hateful conduct is not going to be figurative, it's going to be literally. We are literally going to see that. And we expect government to take a stance against that. The president has been silent when a section of the population have to hear that they had to be killed. And that is, of course, what is leading to what we are seeing now. Other solutions with regard to safety, biggest murder rate in the country, everybody suffers. We are committed with our neighborhood watchers to cooperate to make sure that we get a safer country. Corruption, the US has written a letter to the government a few years ago already, saying that investment is hindered by corruption in the country. We've seen in the Zondo Commission how many people have been involved in state capture. And you don't have to be good in maths to be able to count how many people have been prosecuted. Nearly none. And that sends out a message to any country that they won't want to invest here. And even the ANC, if you look at their members or leaders that are mentioned in the Zondo Commission, 97 of them, only 34 have had to appear in front of the Integrity Commission. This is not a government that is serious about tackling corruption. In local communities, we will continue to work with all communities there, with municipalities. And we want to see specifically as a partner in this. Government, sometimes in municipalities, they are willing to see it fail. They are willing to see that contaminated water goes to townships and suburbs simply because they don't want to cooperate with anybody else. That needs to change. We need to promote mother tongue education for all. That is the biggest injustice against all the people of this country, is that only Afrikaans and English-speaking people, and if BELA is implemented as Mr. Lessufi wants it, it will only be English people that will have mother tongue education. We need to make sure that is, we actually build it to all communities. That is an injustice also towards other communities. And then we want to say we want to build a culture of human rights in the country. But again, this what I said might be harsh words, but we believe the realities should be put on the table. And when we have these realities, it creates the platform for us to sit calmly and say, what can we do about it? AfriForum, and I believe the solidarity movement, reaches out the hand of friendship to the people in this country. We indicate that we want to find amicable solutions and an understanding with the South African government. And we hope that they would also participate so that we can avert the current crisis we are in.